Now first, she was once considered the most photographed woman alive, and today a new statue will be unveiled to mark what would have been Diana, Princess of Wales's 60th birthday.
Well, in just a moment, we'll be talking to some people who knew Diana well, but first, let's remind ourselves of her extraordinary life.
Well, we're joined now by makeup artist Mary Greenwell, who worked with the Princess of Wales for over a decade, as well as Camilla Tominey. So good morning, all of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've all gone pink today.
I know, we really have.
Even your hair. Mary. Look at this. So, Camilla, tell us about this statue, because it's been quite a long time in the planning. First announced in 2017.
Yeah, 5 years in the making almost. And I think it's obviously the perfect timing on what would have been her 60th birthday today. And there's been this sense, I think, of the very careful planning that's gone into this. When you're trying to memorialise a woman like Princess Diana, you know, you've got to get it absolutely right, haven't you? Such a beautiful woman, an icon of the 20th century. And a statue is sometimes difficult to kind of communicate her sort of loving presence and her youthfulness and her
in a statue.
Her
they
softness,
sort of don't go
exactly.
together, yeah.
Although I haven't seen the designs, obviously it's been kept top secret, but I was told it was quite informal, that it's very charming, that it's not at all austere or imperious, and that it reflects her youthful and playful side. So we'll obviously see that later. It's taken a long time, it's been delayed by COVID, and equally I think both brothers have wanted to make sure it's absolutely spot on. So they've been looking at the finest of details, you know, down to how her nose is looking and where it was going to be in Kensington Palace Gardens. That was really important to them. I understand both brothers sort of toured the whole area for some weeks to decide the perfect spot. We got a release overnight from Kensington Palace about how this sunken garden's been recreated in Diana's memory. So forget-me-nots, which are her favourite flowers, are in there, some ballerina roses. I mean, it looks absolutely stunning, and obviously all eyes will be on the unveiling later.
And all eyes will be on the two princes, of course.
Yes.
Because if, you know, reports be to believe that there is a rift there amongst the family, you're saying that they've been very much together on this project, deciding where the statue should go. So you would think that maybe this has gone some way to heal some of that rift, if it is there.
I think there's also a feeling that today must be about Diana and not about any problems they might have as siblings. It's going to be a bit like the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral, in the sense that there's going to be some solemnity about the event, but equally this idea that they are reconciling and coming together for such an important occasion. And I think we'll see them both putting on a brave face. We understand that they've been in communication over the last 24 to 48 hours about the football, and my understanding is that they're going to gather after.
How do we know that?
Well, I think there's just been a bit of chat, that there's been a bit of briefing, that there's been some banter between them. I think in a way to kind of soften the lead into the statue, so everyone isn't talking about tensions and instead is talking about Diana. And equally, my understanding is they're going to meet afterwards. There's immediate family going there, so we think Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, and her sisters are going to be there. So we would expect, wouldn't we, once the public-facing event has happened, that behind Palace Gates they're going to get together.
But it is pretty top secret, this whole thing. I mean, we're not even allowed to say what time it's going to happen.
No, not saying
we don't know who's going to attend and whether the numbers have been trimmed.
Well, I think the numbers have been trimmed. Kensington Palace have said that, so it's being described in the op note as a small event, and there were going to be speeches, but now there aren't. And therefore, there's going to be, I think, an interview with the sculptor, Ian Rank-Broadley. He's the guy who's done the effigy of the Queen on coins since the late 90s, and equally with the garden designer. But I don't expect any words directly from the princes themselves, sort of live on camera. Whether they release a statement later remains to be seen. Well, I think
it's a big day.
It is a big day, and I think they've spoken in the lead up to it. And in fact, Prince Harry did a video for the Diana Award where he talked about the importance of his mother's legacy and keeping that alive. I suppose they want it to have the kind of solemnity and gravitas of it being all about the statue rather than about them commenting. Because it's not just about everybody watching them. Art critics everywhere are going to be gathered to have a look at how they're depicting the world's most photographed women in the last century.
Let's talk to Mary. She was responsible for the look on many of those photographs that we see and know of her. And Mary, you were her makeup artist for a long, long time, creating those iconic looks. But there was a lot more than that, because as with the woman herself, she was more than just this beautiful face. She had a lot more going for her. What was the woman that you knew?
The woman I knew was incredibly kind, very generous. I mean, I used to feel in her company I was just with a sister or really a best friend. She was never austere. She was never anything but just really natural. So in her presence, you could only feel natural and just celebrating yourself as much as her. She allowed you to feel great. And this was her gift to humanity, I think. This was her, you know, this was what she was allowed everyone to feel, was just that she was part of everybody. She became part of everybody, and she really genuinely was. So it was a joy to be with her. And I remember the first time I met her with Patrick Marchelier and Sam McKnight when we did a Vogue cover in 1991, which is now incredibly famous. It's in a beautiful strapless dress, and she came into the studio. We weren't told who was coming to the studio. She came to the studio full of life and joy, and when she arrived, I promise you, it was like just anybody just walked in, someone really natural and charming, delightful, and forget all the curtsying, whatever. She sat down in the chair and let us all do whatever we wanted to her.
There is a bond between someone who sits in that makeup chair and the person that makes them up. And it's often said, you know, that the makeup person is the last person you see before you go airside, your land side type of thing.
Yes.
And so it can be a reassuring relationship. It can be, I mean, it's an intimate relationship. You know the face very well. Now, obviously, I'm not asking you for any of those conversations because that relationship is also incredibly discreet. But in the makeup chair, did she have things that she preferred? Was there a way you knew that she liked to look? What worked and what didn't work?
In the end, the most important thing is always enhancement for me. Whoever I'm doing, it's to make them look their best possible self. So that's what I would always do for her. You know, I met her quite a while ago now. It would have been 30 years, my goodness. And so I watched her develop and become a slightly older woman. Therefore, you adjust the makeup to suit your age, the event and everything else. But basically, she allowed me to do whatever I wanted. She was very trusting and obviously went on working with me because she did trust me. So I'm honored by that. And therefore, I always wanted her to make her look her very best. And, you know, color-wise, I mean, I don't think you need to wear color in makeup. I think the most flattering colors are always the taupes on your eyes and, you know, really lovely soft bronzer and blush and then a lip color to suit the moment. She did love, like, red lips sometimes, but not a really piercing red, not a bright red, but a soft sort of, even a sort of berry red. She loved that.
Can I ask you, I mean, today would have been her 60th birthday and she was so scrutinised in the spotlight for everything she wore. She didn't really get to the point where she started that ageing process. I know that you've said in the past that her skin routine was incredibly important to her. She really looked after her skin. But how do you think she would have felt as a woman in the spotlight reaching her 60s?
Do you know what? I think she probably would have felt like all of us, really aware of it. I mean, to say that we're not is just a lie. I think every woman is aware of getting older and doesn't particularly like it, to be very, very frank. Would she have liked it? She would have accepted it, of course, because she was very accepting of those around her and herself. But of course she would have had issues with it, naturally. So, I mean, I can only assume, I'm not saying anything out of turn because she's not here to tell us how she feels, but I would imagine that it would have been hard for her like it is for everyone. And that's the honest truth. I mean, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to speak to you.
We can talk now to Nicky Lilley, who used to work as a Princess Diana lookalike before her death. Good morning to you. So I suppose, really, that, you know, this is perhaps a little bit of an insight into what the princess might have looked like. You're pretty much exactly the same age as she would have as she would have been. But for you, those times must have been busy, but also very special.
Yes, yeah, I used to do lots of work, lots of fun things, different jobs all around the world. So, yeah, it was a wonderful few years when I was working as a lookalike. And
people used to come up to you in the street and think that you were her?
Yes, in bizarre situations, sort of pushing my supermarket trolley, and someone would come up to me in tears and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry about Charles, you know, the infidelity and things like this." And I was thinking, I'm sure Diana doesn't push her own supermarket trolley, but still. She did.
And for you today, you know, this because you're going to come up here a little bit later on and be in our fashion item and help us out with that. But how do you feel about today? This would have been her 60th birthday.
It is very poignant, and just seeing all the clips of her looking young and beautiful, and you know, all the lovely things she did for charity. It's just very sad that, you know, she would have obviously carried on and done so many amazing things. It's, you know, she was... Anybody who dies young, it's very sad, but she was such a force for good. I felt that it's extra poignant today.
Well, we'll see you a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Camilla, I suppose that's the thing with anyone who is taken from us so young. Time stops.
Yeah.
And she will always be that person we've been looking at in those pictures.
It's hard to believe that she was only 36 because she had achieved so much, hadn't she, in her short life comparatively. Yeah. But also I think it is poignant. You know, I was listening to the radio this morning on the way in and felt a bit tearful, really, because I think she was such a legend and such a one-of-a-kind and formed such a huge part of my childhood.
Yeah.
I just felt that she was a major feature of the 80s and 90s. And so I think it's only fitting, actually. I'm really pleased we've got this statue. It's been a long time coming. We're approaching the 25th anniversary of her death. You know, we have the fountain and we've got the playground. It's almost like it doesn't do her justice. So I think this, in Kensington Palace, the royal residence where she'll always be synonymous, is really fitting. The timing's great, and I think it's going to be good to see the brothers back together for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.